Let's get right to our panel. Professor James Peterson is Director of Africana Studies at Lehigh University. He also taught at Penn State from 2003 until 2007. Is it really intimidating enough that employees would fear for their jobs if they report child rape?
Sure it is. I mean, you can't live in the entire state of Pennsylvania without feeling the power and force of Penn State University's football program. It is an institution unto itself. Surely those custodians there probably not only feared for their jobs, but you have to understand how the community operates. They would have been ostracized by their own community if they were implicated in somehow besmirching the reputation of the Penn State football program. That is the extent of the institutional power of a program that over decades and decades accumulates so much cultural and economic capital. Striking and shocking, and certainly shows the desperation of the campaign. First, let me say that we have asked Mr. Romney repeatedly for him to show us his taxes. So instead of making jokes about birtherism, he could get along to the business of doing that. But this shows you the desperation of this campaign. The bottom line is this is absolutely divisive. And for a campaign that's been complaining about the divisiveness of politics from the president's side, this is just pure hypocrisy. So whether it's a gaffe or not, that's fine. We can continue to debate that. The bottom line is divisive politics, and it pollutes the body politic of the American public sphere. That racial animus and these kind of ads, like the welfare ads and other sort of comments that are playing to race, actually do make headway with those folk who are a little bit more conservative, racially speaking. And so whether it's strategy or not, it still operates strategically, and it's still extremely divisive politics. You know, when you're talking about conventions, the question is what gets across. And what got across from Mr. Eastwood's presentation was confusion and disorganization and improper vetting on the part of the Romney camp. But the whole idea of sitting a United States president down and talking down to him is paternalistic and patriarchal beyond remark. The invisible Obama, which is the sort of chair Twitter entity that's cropped up overnight, has more followers than either Ryan or Romney picked up over the course of the week. So you can see people's interest in the spectacle of what's going on here as opposed to the message or the substance that was supposed to get from that particular episode. I mean, we thought Citizens United was a terrible decision and that super PACs were kind of a loophole for the political process, but actually these 501c4s, these so-called social welfare organizations, are a loophole within the loophole. So there's a way in which our political system is really going right down the tubes. We've got to get money out of politics. It is corrupting the entire system.
The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, a major GOP-affiliated 501c4, is fighting a bill that would force disclosure of donors because they worry that donors would be subject to, and I'm quoting, threats, harassment or reprisals. Do they seriously expect people to believe this?
It's absurd. What they want to be able to do is they want to be able to support certain political positions that are antithetical to their consumers and their constituents without their consumers or constituents finding out about it. At the end of the day, Mitt Romney does have to make the case not just to the independents, but also to his party. In the world that we live in, you've got to think really, really seriously and really globally. And Teray's right. People skills matter. Diplomacy in 2012 and going forward is going to be a key part of everything that we do. Being able to relate to and connect to people and being sensible and sensitive about interacting with people is a very, very important part of the American presidency now, especially now that we've seen this in the presidency of Barack Obama.
Professor Peterson, let me start with you. Is this ad intended to court black voters, or is this a ploy to get independents to believe Romney is a reasonable person?
I'll take B for $100, please, Dr. Dyson. Actually, the second option is what the initial speech itself was intended to do, which is clearly he's not going to win over too many voters at the NAACP, especially with using politicized and racially kind of charged language. And it's racially charged because what he's referring to as Obamacare is something that has a disproportionate impact positively on the African-American community.
I'm joined now by Dr. James Peterson, Director of Africana Studies and Associate Professor of English at Lehigh University.
Good evening, Doc.
You know what? You've seen the background. You've seen the backdrop. What have you noticed about race relations in America during the Obama presidency?
Well, I think, number one, I think that his presidency in some ways exacerbated some of the challenges and some of the residue of racism from America's past. But I think people need to understand that it is quite possible for us to make progress, like electing the first black president, but also have some areas of challenges, like the institutional racism that we see in the prison industrial complex, or the institutional racism that we see sometimes in the criminal justice system on the whole. I mean, all we need is one Troy Davis to show us how race and bias operate in terms of the death penalty, or one Trayvon Martin to show us that racial profiling is still alive and well. There are a lot of different challenges and issues that we have to confront with respect to race. Just because we make a step forward doesn't mean that we don't have other issues and areas that we have to be concerned about and deal with directly. But we have to also remember that this works for a lot of different issues that don't even have the same kind of history as welfare. Things like healthcare, things like cap and trade are still also being racialized in the political environment that we're in. So we need to really step back and think about this in a really, I think, a more complicated way and realize that what the Romney campaign is doing is sacrificing the sort of public good of our realpolitik, as you say, Chris, for this short-term advantage. They're focused too much on this kind of evaluation. What they should be focused on, how can we develop and enhance the curriculum so that it speaks more to the people who are most challenged within the system? How can we provide the key sort of support in the after-school hours, 3 to 6, when our children are having the most challenges in terms of getting their work done, being safe, and things of that nature? How can we beef up support for in-school nutrition and the kinds of things that we know will make students perform better? So those are the things they need to do for those populations that they've identified as lagging behind. But this kind of rhetoric sort of, I think, is antithetical to those goals.
Joining us now from Philadelphia is Dr. James Peterson, an associate professor at Lehigh University and contributor to thegrio.com.
But Ari's absolutely right here that one of the challenges for the president tonight is to make sure that he controls the terms of the debate. I think it's less about him being aggressive. It's less about him punching Romney rhetorically and much more about making sure that things like women's issues have got to get on the table. We've spent precious little time over the course of these first 2 debates talking about the issues that matter to a lot of folk, not just women, but to a lot of folk in this country, about reproductive rights, about the direction this country is going in with respect to those rights, and the ways in which we can sort of get out of this war against women and all these social issues that actually obscure some of the real issues around jobs and the economy that we also need to be talking about. Despite whatever people may think or not think, black folk are not monolithic. We do not vote monolithically. We vote the issues and we vote the candidates in terms of their character and their stability and their ability to work on behalf of the issues that we think are important. This is extremely significant. Many leaders in America think of this as the most important civil rights issue of this current moment. There are a number of different tactics that have been used in the effort of voter suppression, including Republican state legislators in creating all these voter ID laws, including the billboards that you see threatening fraud. There have been some groups on the right wing of the Republican Party who've been organizing these so-called poll watchers, which are really more like voter intimidators that are going to be on site. And so when you look across at all these different tactics, what you see is there's been a concerted effort to disenfranchise those voters who would most likely be voting for the Democratic Party. At the end of the day, we need to be moving towards increasing franchisement. We need to be moving towards getting more people to participate in the process, not trying to block folk from voting. But here's the thing, and here's what's at the core here. The base of the Republican Party has been shrinking for some time, and the Democratic Party's base, especially amongst African Americans, people of color, Latinos, has been growing for some time. And so in that environment, I think we're seeing some folk on the right take some desperate measures to try to limit what Democrats can do, especially at the presidential level this year.